Hi, Martin here, and in this video I'm going to be explaining for loops in Swift programming. So let's jump straight in. So firstly for this video I'm going to be using Swift Playgrounds and Learn to Code again. So obviously Learn to Code is the interactive course created by Apple within Swift Playgrounds to teach the Swift programming language. If you don't have Learn to Code or Swift Playgrounds, I'll link some videos below that show you how to get it and go over some of the basics. So here in Learn to Code, just a reminder, if you click on this icon up near the top left, you'll be able to see all of the different challenges contained within the course. So we start with commands, we have functions, which I went through in my previous video, and after that we have for loops. So first things first, what is a for loop? Well, a for loop is used to repeat, or what we call iterate, over a block of code a set number of times. So it's essentially a way to repeat our code. So to look at this in a more practical sense, let's jump into the first challenge in this section called using loops. So to create a for loop, we start with the word for, then the letter I. Now, one of the most common questions that I have when it comes to programming, and particularly loops, is why do we use the letter I? So I is our loop counter variable. Basically, it keeps count of how many times we run through the loop. Technically, you don't have to use an I, but it is common practice and something that you'll see across all programming languages. So it's best to stick with using the I for our loop counter variable. So next we write in, and then you'll see the number 1, some dots, and in this challenge we just have a box that says number. This is where we need to write the number of times that we want to run through our loop. After this we have an opening curly bracket and then a closing curly bracket, and you can see in between these two is where we write the code that we want to repeat in our loop. So in this challenge we need to add code to our loop to collect all the gems. As you can see, we have a puzzle with 5 rows, and in each row is a gem, and at the end of the row is and the start is a teleporter. So essentially we need to move to the gem, collect it, and then move to the teleporter. So I'm going to click inside of my for loop. I can see here that I need byte, my character, to move forward twice. So I'm going to select to move forward from this bottom bar here. He should then be on the gem, so I'm going to collect it, and then I'm finally going to add another move forward to get him on to the teleporter. So once we've done that, let's go ahead and run our code. So you can see there's one thing that I've forgotten to implement, and that is I haven't specified the number of times that I want to run through my loop. And that is essentially the core part of our for loops, is we're specifying how many times do you want this code to be repeated. So a good place to start is let's count the number of gems. So we can see there are 5 gems here. So that's a pretty good guess as to how many times we're going to need to loop through our code. So let's put in that 5 and then run our code again. So hopefully now we should see byte move forward and collect the gem. And if we've done it correctly, that teleporter should move him to the start of the next row, and then our loop is repeated after that. So that is how we implement a for loop in the Swift programming language. It's pretty straightforward, and again, it's designed to make our code more efficient. For this challenge in particular, using this loop has reduced what could have been 20 different lines of code to solve each row down into around about 5. And again, that's making our code much more efficient. So why don't we go over this one more time with another challenge. So I'm going to click on the challenge loop jumper over here on the left hand side. So here we have to work out the pattern, and it says by collecting the first gem and then see if that same pattern works for the rest of them. So let's go ahead and write down the code to collect that first gem. So we'll start again by adding a for loop. We can obviously go through and type all the information, or we can click on for down the bottom and it will kind of add most of the instructions that we need for our for loops. Remember, we have the for, I, in, 1, however many times we want to loop through our code. So remember, a good way is counting the number of gems. So we have 5 gems again. So I'm going to put that in straight away at the start. And then we have this code. So that's where we need to write the code to collect the gems. So we'll go ahead and write the code to collect the first gem. So I can see from here, the first thing that Byte's going to need to do is he's going to need to move forwards. And then we're going to need to turn off to the left. And then we're going to need to move forward a couple of times. And then he should, at that point, be standing on the gem. So we're going to collect the gem. So that's the code to collect the first gem. So why don't we go ahead and run it? So I'm going to click here on the left-hand side so that we can run it a little bit faster and see if that is working. Okay, so I'm going to stop it there because we're clearly running into an issue at this point in time. So if we go back and reevaluate our code to collect the first gem, we can see that when we finish our code with collect gem, our character Byte is facing the edge. So he walks down to here and he's facing out towards the edge. Once our loop starts again, the first instruction is to move forward. So all that's going to happen is he's going to start hitting the edge. Simplest solution for this would be to turn Byte in another direction. Well, if we turn him left, he's just going to be facing another edge and bump into that one. So a good idea might be turning him off to the right, where he's facing out into the open. And then if he moves forward, there's actually a space to move forward into. So let's go ahead and add that turn right as our final instruction in the loop. I'm going to go here and I'm going to run fastest. And fingers crossed that this will solve the puzzle world for us. So we're looking good so far. Okay, so again, you can see that we've just written code to collect 1 gem. But because that pattern is repeated and we know how many gems to collect, we've again reduced what would be 20 plus lines of code down to a much smaller amount. So I hope that this tutorial has been useful. If it has, please like, comment, and then consider subscribing for more videos. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.